I played through the opening of 3 versions of Ocarina of Time so that you don't have to. The goal of this video is to find out which is better, the original or the remakes. Does the original still hold up well, and which is the best way to experience this classic game? As a brief bit of history, the original Ocarina of Time came out in 1998 on the Nintendo 64. The first remake, if you will, was 2002 with Master Quest, the GameCube's new take on the game. It would also get a release as part of the collector's edition in 2003, and as a bonus disc for the special edition of Wind Waker in 2003. Then in 2007 it would be released again on the Wii Virtual Console as a port of the N64 version. It wouldn't be until 2011 that we would actually get a fully fledged remake in Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS. But we'll get to that later. So for this video I'll be focusing on the original, the GameCube Master Quest, and the 3DS remake. So let's start. So the original was out in 1998 and I would have been 2 years old at the time. Granted, I wouldn't have played it upon the initial release, but I grew up watching my dad play it from a young age. And as soon as I could pick up a controller, I played it. This is one of the first ever games I played, along with the likes of Mario 64 and GoldenEye, but somehow this game grabbed my attention the most out of them all. Just the idea of adventure, this game's world was so easy to get lost in to me, it blew my mind as a kid, and was also how I fell in love with the series. But what about now? Do I still have that same feeling? Well, I recorded my initial reaction to some of it whilst getting the clips, so here. In the vast, deep forest of Hyrule, long have I served as the guardian spirit. I am known as the Deku Tree. So, this is my initial reactions to the opening bit from Ocarina of Time, the original. I don't remember it looking like that. That texture is a bit... Why is Link not even in the bed? Jesus Christ. You know, it would help if the game wasn't glitching. I could get a better reaction if it wasn't glitching, right? Sure, it doesn't look as bad as, like... I mean... The character models are actually kind of like... Other than Link's salad 4 cans. I don't like Link's house. The textures and stuff of Link's house are awful. Like... I don't remember them looking this bad, that's for sure. Hey, come on, can Hyrule's destiny really depend upon such a lazy boy? You can see like proper the polygons in it. You can tell this is an N64 game, like. So that part of it is dated a little bit. The boots don't look bad. Like, just checking out his whole clothing. Also, the wings, the Navi's like little texture in her wings. For an N64 game, like that's quite attention to detail, if you ask me. Yeah, this is one of the first, well, one of the earlier 3D. It's probably one of the first 3D adventure games that. What even is that on Link's table there? It's as if they've just, like, took a picture and then just inserted that in. Oh. Is that even any better when you, like, do that? No, that... Ugh, if anything, that's, like, worse now. What the hell? So, as you can see, I didn't have the best reaction. Quite a mixed reaction, if I'm perfectly honest, looking at it in retrospect. There's definitely parts of the game that look okay. Like, you can pass them off and they're like, yeah, that's fine. But some of those textures, like, even looking at this footage now, reviewing my initial reaction, I still stand by what I say there. Some of it is not nice to look at. It is not easy on the eyes in a couple of those weird textures, especially when I can't tell what certain things are. So before we see any more of the original, let's take a quick look at Master Quest on the GameCube. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect from this, if it was gonna be all that much different, but again, here's my initial reactions. Okay, my initial reaction to the GameCube version of Ocarina of Time. So on here we have like a very different menu for starters. which we're going to select Master Quest because I think that one is exactly the same. So if we select Master Quest, at least it's a bit different. That texture in the background bugs me. No, I'm joking. Is the opening like... Yeah, Master Quest doesn't look much different. The textures look a little better. I could be mistaken about that. Link's actually in his bed as well, so I want to say that the textures look slightly better. They look maybe a bit brighter. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. I could just be like, you know, they don't look great, but I feel like they look better. So, looking at the comparison of the N64 footage and the GameCube footage, I can probably say the textures aren't better, and they're not really even brighter or anything, but the text does move faster on the GameCube version than the N64 version. Don't really know why, but that's the only major difference. Other than that, I think it does look the same. So, as you can see from my initial reaction, I thought there were more changes than what there actually were. There isn't really a lot changed in this initial opening. The text is a bit faster, things are made to make the game run a bit smoother, but it's not really had much of a graphics overhaul or anything like that. So for me, I can't really quite say that just from this intro that it's any better than the original yet. Now here's the 3DS version. This version is very different. And well, you can see by this first initial reaction how different it really is. Link's hands still, the fingers are better. They're still very like stuck together kind of thing. Okay. Do you know what? This looks so different already. Like, I forget how different it looks. Like his mustache and everything, the textures on him. Like this is so much better. Like, look at that.
Hello.
Oh, Link, wake up. Wake up, Link. Link looks different as well. Like, you can see they've designed him a lot differently. By what that I mean, like the strap going across his chest so that he can put his sword on his back and everything. Like, they've actually included that on his young design, which he didn't get in the games till Majora's Mask. Oh, see, like I can actually see what that is. Can you actually zoom in though? Do you know what? I actually don't know how. If there is an option to change the camera in here, then I don't know it. So it might just be fixed at this. If I'm wrong, I apologise, guys. But yeah, at least we can see that actually looks like a sink now. That's disappointing. I thought I could change the perspective so you could see a bit better. Now let's take a look at Navi. Yeah, she's got the same texture, like wings and stuff. Do you know what? I have to admit, the N64 Navi still look pretty good. So as you can see from the footage, Ocarina of Time 3D is very different. Visually, at least. It definitely is completely different than the other two in terms of how it looks, the textures. Everything visual is completely different. But how different? Well, I used this clip right here of Kokiri Forest, Navi navigating her way through the forest in the N64, the GameCube, and the 3DS versions to see exactly how they looked all side by side. So, as you can see, graphically, obviously the 3DS version looks completely different. The N64 version and the GameCube version look pretty much identical. However, the GameCube version is a bit faster at going through the scene. The 3DS version would probably be just as fast, but there was a little bit of lag in the footage that I had, causing it to stutter. Other than that, the main difference between the N64 and the GameCube version is the aspect ratio as well. So whilst playing the game, I managed to stumble upon somewhere that I could really test out how different these games were. In the house of the boss of the Kokiri, Mido, or Mido, I don't know. It doesn't matter his name, it's this guy. But regardless, within his house is a perfect way of showing off really how different the 3DS version is. In both the GameCube and the N64 version, we have draw distance. This doesn't exist in the 3DS version. If we go to the back of Midow's house in between the chests, and then we walk slowly forward, we can see exactly Link's character model changing and adapting. But that's not all. In both the N64 and the GameCube version as well, the rupees inside the chest have completely different models than the rupees normally do. In fact, they don't look anything like the usual rupees, whereas the 3DS version actually corrects this and makes the model look exactly like it normally would. Not sure why they don't look like that in the other two versions, but yeah, a weird thing I noticed. The same thing can also be said for the model of the recovery heart. In the N64 and GameCube version, it's enlarged and a lot different, whereas in the 3DS version, it's your usual recovery heart. But enough about that, let's dive into the first dungeon, the Deku Tree. So this is the footage from the N64 version of the game. I've zoomed the footage in a little bit just so that you can see the graphics a bit better and everything visually on the screen. Just so you can kind of judge for yourself what you think it looks like. To me, it's definitely dated, and I definitely don't remember it looking like this. If you take off the nostalgia goggles a little bit, it doesn't look the best, in my personal opinion. Gameplay-wise though, it's pretty solid. I honestly don't have any real complaints about this. The buttons all work, pretty much everything works how it's supposed to, the menu screen. It's good. My only real issue here, which is strange, was this part. For some reason, I didn't really have that many Deku sticks, and as soon as I ran out, I didn't really have a way of replenishing them without going outside. Now, this could just be an issue on my part, but I didn't have this issue with the other two games. I had plenty of Deku sticks in both the GameCube and the 3DS version of the game. But this one I spent a lot of time just trying to find Deku sticks. Something that's worth mentioning though is in the very early version of the game, which is the one that I grew up with, the movable blocks, the switches and the mirror shield all had a very different design than what they do in the later two versions, which I'll now put on the screen so you can see for yourself. The reason why this was likely removed from the later versions is due to it looking a bit like a religious symbol. You don't want to put real-life religions in your game. So just like the N64 version, I have zoomed this footage in a little bit. That's mostly to fix the aspect ratio. As to me, that's one of the bigger things about this game that's different. But with this being Master Quest, things are different straight away. You can climb up these vines and there's a Skulltularon, which there isn't in the N64 version. And once you actually get up there, the layout is actually slightly different of where you're meant to go, which kind of threw me off a little bit, not going and getting the slingshot before coming up to the top level. Also, again, they've added in these torches everywhere, which makes the puzzles very different from how they were in the original Deku Tree. No, I can't lie, this did confuse me a little bit, and I did kind of wander around aimlessly because I was doing things out of order. It also gone to show that I really wasn't very good at this, because the more enemies that were on screen, the more I was getting hit. It is definitely a ramped up difficulty. Not like ridiculously hard, but you can tell that they've added more to sabotage you. Again, if you've played the original, it makes this a lot more confusing, because the placement of like where the slingshot is and different items like that is all completely different. Like, I had to come to this room to get the slingshot, which is on the top floor, and the room that you would normally get the slingshot from actually has an eye above the door that you have to shoot with the slingshot. It definitely makes you think a lot more. You think you know the dungeon, but Master Quest, it makes it so much different. A little bit further into the dungeon is this room with gravestones and such. And this probably confused me the most, because in Ocarina of Time I'm used to having to pull the gravestones. But yeah, in this you don't. It was strange. They added a lot into this room that just didn't need to be there, like the stones and all those torches at once. It felt like overkill in a way. So in this clip you can see the new block design, which they've changed from the original, like I mentioned before. So I'll just quickly put them both on screen so you can compare them. So this new design that is used for the block, the shield and the switches is actually the Gerudo crest. Now before I move on, I want to say one final thing, and that's the Deku Scrub puzzle. Before you go and fight the boss, Gohma, you have to deflect the Deku nuts back at the Deku Scrubs in the correct order. Now in the original game, you're actually told the answer to this puzzle by another Deku Scrub, but unless I completely missed something, Master Quest didn't actually tell me the order to do it. I was actually kind of stuck on this puzzle for a minute, not knowing exactly what order to do them in, and I was trying multiple ways of doing this. In all fairness, I definitely think that Master Quest is meant more for if you've played Ocarina of Time already. Otherwise, a puzzle like this would just be really frustrating. Moving along to Ocarina of Time 3D. So at this point, I feel like it goes without saying, but visually, obviously the 3DS version is way more detailed. From the vines to the chest, even to the slingshot, there are just some visual details that are a bit more exaggerated in this version, which makes it look a lot nicer. Also, the screen itself is a lot more bright and colourful. However, the menu screen right here, that's the thing that stumped me a little bit. I honestly forgot about it being touchscreen like that, and I kept wanting to just pause the game. Like, don't get me wrong, once you get used to it, it's not too hard to just keep remembering to use the touchscreen to enter that menu. But after playing the other two, it was so ingrained into my brain that I needed to pause it first that I kept wanting to do that with this. I will say though, to do with that, I didn't care for the fact that it was only 2 actual buttons that I could equip items to. The other 2 were touchscreen buttons, which means you were forced to use a stylus. Again, it's meant to make things a bit quicker, like changing items on the go, but to me it just doesn't work the same as just pausing and equipping it to the buttons that I want them to be mapped to. Other than that, it mostly plays the same. I'll be honest though, controls wise, it feels a lot weirder just because it's the 3DS. I'd personally say that the GameCube version actually feels like the most comfortable to hold and use items and such. With this, it didn't feel as comfortable. I think part of that is due to just the fact that you can only equip items to 2 buttons on this version, and the other 2 buttons are then touchscreens. The N64 version had actual buttons, and the GameCube version had the C-stick. Honestly though, the C-stick's probably the most comfortable one to use. I actually really enjoy pulling back on the C-stick when I'm using the slingshot. It makes me feel like I'm actually pulling back the sling to fire it. Notably as well, the 3DS version does have gyro controls, if you want to turn them on. Personally, I find them horrible to use and I can't aim with them at all. But they're there, you can use them. So rather than boring you and showing you 3 separate versions of the boss, I decided to show them all on screen at the same time. This will show just how fast I can go through them. To be honest with you though, that's all more a skill thing than it is an actual gameplay mechanic. I mean, the fact that I had to fight this boss 3 times in this recording session just to show if it was any different in any of the battles, that says a lot. The only thing I will say is I was a little disappointed with Master Quest's version because I actually expected it to be a lot more difficult. I thought the boss would be different and maybe add a bit more difficulty to it, but it felt exactly the same. If anything, I felt like I could defeat it just as quick, if not quicker, now that I'd already had a go on the original. One thing I will say though is this boss battle's a lot easier than I remember it being as a kid. I remember struggling with this a lot more, but after doing it 3 times, I realised that it's a super easy boss battle and you can actually kill Gohma before she even hatches any of her babies. I have zoomed in on these footages as well, just so that you can see it a little bit better whilst it's comparing it. And there you go, I finished the 3DS version the quickest. then the GameCube version, and then on the N64 version, it's as if it took me a minute to realise that the Deku stick was the most powerful way of defeating Gohma. So, to conclude this video, which is the best version to play? Well, honestly, any of them. I know that's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it's the truth. Like I showed in the beginning, there's so many ways to play this game. Heck, there's even a Switch version now. Sure, it's part of the online package, and it's only the N64 port, but it exists. If you're a stickler for details, then the 3DS version is definitely the one that you want to play. The character models look like the concept art. This is closer probably to what the vision was for the game originally. Mind you, I kind of wish that with the remake they included some cut content that was initially supposed to be in the game, but hey, that's a whole other video to make. But yeah, if you like graphics and visuals, Ocarina of Time 3D is the one for you. However, the accessibility of it probably makes it a little bit lower on the scale just because of the fact that it is on the handheld, but it is probably the one I would recommend the most. If you're looking more for a challenge, then the GameCube version is hands down an amazing one to play, especially because in my opinion the controls on that one are the best. Way better than the controls and the feel of the 3DS version. And not only does the GameCube version include Master Quest to give you that extra challenge, it also does have the original on there, but now with faster dialogue and the cutscenes running a lot smoother and quicker too. But hey, for its time, the N64 version was actually really good. And okay, some of it hasn't aged perfectly, but still, to this day, I feel as if it's still fun to play. And I definitely wouldn't be opposed to playing it. Sure, it's a little rough around the edges and doesn't look perfect, but it still plays fine, and again, the controls aren't bad. Maybe the controller itself being free handles is a little bit weird, but again, like I say, the GameCube version kind of fixes that, so at the end of the day, it's completely up to you. If I had to pick, I'd probably pick the 3DS version, but I would rather be able to play it with like the GameCube controller. If I could have a hybrid of the two, that would be amazing. I mean, heck, it's been a while. Maybe they'll remake Ocarina of Time again, including some new things, updating the graphics, making the controls really nice and smooth. Who knows? But for now, this is the Welsh Underachievers signing off. Thank you guys for watching.